It is 1:42 a.m. The house is completely silent. Your body feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds. Your eyes are burning with pure exhaustion, and yet, the exact moment your head hits the pillow, it is like someone flipped a massive switch in your mind. Suddenly, you are thinking about an email you sent 3 days ago, the state of your retirement fund, a weird conversation you had at lunch, and whether you remembered to lock the back door. Why does this happen?
It is the ultimate modern paradox, and millions of people are trapped in this exact scenario every single night. You are physically exhausted, but neurologically, you are running a marathon. Most people lying in the dark think they have a sleep problem, or perhaps a psychological issue, but really, they are caught in a deeply biological trap known as the anxiety sleep loop.
It feels incredibly isolating when you are in it. The harder you try to fall asleep, the more awake and panicked you become. It is like emotional quicksand. The struggling just pulls you under faster. Today, we are going to unpack exactly why our brains betray us in the dark, the hidden physiological costs of our always-on culture, and most importantly, how to signal to your nervous system that it is finally safe to rest.
To understand why the brain refuses to shut down, we have to stop looking at anxiety as just a fleeting feeling. Anxiety is fundamentally biological. It is your nervous system constantly scanning the environment, evaluating stress, uncertainty, and emotional overload.
So it is essentially an ancient survival mechanism that is misfiring in the modern world?
Exactly. The human brain evolved primarily to detect acute, immediate threats. A predator in the bushes. You react, you survive, the threat passes, and your nervous system resets. But evolution never prepared us for continuous, low-grade psychological stimulation. We no longer have predators in the bushes, but we have 24-hour news cycles, financial pressures, endless social media comparisons, and a little glowing rectangle in our pockets that constantly demands our attention. Because of this, our nervous system rarely gets a true, uninterrupted recovery phase anymore.
That makes perfect sense. The saber-toothed tiger has been replaced by the unread notification. But why does the brain decide to process all of this at 2 in the morning? During the day, most people function fine. They do not feel this overwhelming panic. But the minute the lights go out, the thoughts become deafening.
Because daytime is full of noise and distraction. When you are working, talking, moving, or staring at screens, your brain is occupied. It is actively processing external data. But at night, the external world goes completely quiet. Without those distractions, your unresolved internal stress suddenly has a megaphone. Think of it like sitting in a crowded, noisy restaurant. You never notice the hum of the air conditioner. But when everyone leaves and the room is dead silent, that hum sounds incredibly loud.
That is a brilliant way to put it. The nighttime echo chamber. And once that echo starts, it feels like the body goes into a state of high alert. Your heart rate goes up slightly, your muscles tense up, and your breathing gets shallow.
Yes, and scientifically, we call that state hyperarousal. It is a condition where the autonomic nervous system remains excessively activated. Even when the body desperately needs to recover, your brain is struggling to shift from the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight mode, into the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode. Instead of transitioning smoothly, it gets partially stuck in threat detection.
Which perfectly explains that bizarre, frustrating sensation of being mentally wired, but physically drained. But here is the terrifying part. This is not just a one-night issue for most people. It turns into a vicious, self-reinforcing cycle. You do not sleep, so you are stressed, and because you are stressed, you cannot sleep.
The biological feedback loop is relentless. Sleep deprivation actually impairs the emotional regulation systems in the brain. Specifically, it affects the connection between the amygdala, which processes fear and raw emotion, and the prefrontal cortex, which handles logical thinking and regulation. When you do not sleep well, your amygdala becomes hyperreactive. Your baseline for stress perception skyrockets. So the next night, your anxiety sensitivity is even higher, making sleep even more difficult. Over time, the nervous system literally loses its flexibility. It forgets how to relax.
It is a profound societal issue when you zoom out and look at it. We have normalized this chronic overload. People wear their exhaustion like a badge of honor. You hear it all the time. People bragging about only sleeping 4 hours a night, or casually mentioning that their brain never stops. We treat constant activation as the baseline for modern success. But what is the long-term biological cost of this?
The cost is immense, and we are seeing it in the rise of metabolic and mental health crises. The brain was simply not designed for continuous stimulation without interruption. We often view recovery as a weakness or a luxury for the weekend, when in reality, recovery is essential neurological maintenance. If you drove a car at 100 miles per hour all day, every day, and never changed the oil or let the engine cool down, it would completely break down. The human nervous system is no different.
And this is where the conversation around wearable technology and physiological data gets really fascinating. Because a lot of people do not even realize they're in this hyper-aroused state until they hit total burnout. They push through the fatigue with caffeine and willpower, but our bodies are actually giving off warning signals long before a crash happens, aren't they?
Absolutely. And one of the most critical yet invisible signals is heart rate variability, or HRV. HRV measures the micro-variations in time between each of your heartbeats, and it is a phenomenal window into the balance of your autonomic nervous system. A lower HRV generally indicates that your body is under elevated stress physiology and lacks recovery flexibility.
So it is like a tennis player waiting for a serve. If they are bouncing on their toes, ready to move left or right, that is high HRV. They are flexible and responsive. But if they are standing flat-footed and stiff, that is low HRV. They are stuck.
That is a perfect analogy. When you are chronically activated, your recovery signals deteriorate. You become the flat-footed tennis player. You might think you feel fine consciously, but your physiology tells a completely different story.
So it is not just about tracking how many hours you lay in bed tossing and turning. It is about understanding the actual quality of the nervous system's recovery. This is exactly the philosophy behind health intelligence platforms like OXYZEN. It shifts the entire paradigm. It is no longer about merely recording a bad night of sleep. It is about interpreting the data to recognize patterns of stress and readiness before the system crashes.
Precisely. The future of mental and metabolic health cannot depend on reacting to a breakdown after it happens. It has to be about recognizing overload earlier. By continuously monitoring these subtle physiological shifts, we can intervene before chronic insomnia sets in, before burnout, before the nervous system becomes permanently trapped in survival mode.
Intervening sounds great in theory, but how do we actually do it in practice? If someone is listening to this right now, dreading the moment they have to turn off the lights tonight, how do they break the loop? How do we teach the brain that it's okay to stand down?
It starts with a fundamental shift in mindset. You cannot force the brain to stop thinking. The harder you try to suppress anxious thoughts, the more power and attention you give them. Instead, your goal should be to create biological signals of safety. Consistent sleep timing, practicing breathing exercises, and reducing artificial light exposure at night can drastically change your physiology.
Light plays a massive role in this, doesn't it? We are staring at bright screens until the minute we close our eyes.
It is a massive disruption. Darkness itself is a powerful biological signal. The nervous system interprets a dark environment as a cue for safety, circadian transition, and the release of melatonin. When we flood our eyes with artificial nighttime stimulation, we are chemically confusing our brains. We are telling our biology that the sun is still up and the threat is still present.
It is almost poetic. We have to reclaim the dark. We have banished it with artificial light and endless scrolling. But darkness is actually our sanctuary. It is where the healing happens.
It really is. Small, consistent interventions like leaving the phone out of the bedroom, keeping the room cool and dark, or just 10 minutes of mindfulness can create massive physiological benefits over time. You are not just trying to sleep, you are actively retraining your nervous system to feel safe enough to recover.
Retraining the nervous system to feel safe. That is such a powerful reframing of the issue. Your brain is not trying to torture you at 2 in the morning. It is actually trying to protect you. It is just that its protection system has gone into overdrive, fighting phantom threats in the shadows of your bedroom.
Exactly. And perhaps one of the most profound health interventions available to us today is simply showing our bodies that the war is over for the day. Recovery is not something that just passively happens to you. It is a state you have to intentionally cultivate.
As we navigate this incredibly fast-paced, hyper-connected world, perhaps the ultimate luxury And the ultimate necessity is the ability to disconnect, to step out of the loop, listen to the subtle intelligence of our own bodies, and allow ourselves the grace of true rest. The data is there. The physiological maps are clear. The question is, are we willing to listen before our biology forces us to?
That is undoubtedly the defining health question of our generation.
Something to think deeply about tonight, hopefully long before 1:42 a.m.